What can be unburdened by what has been? Good evening, everyone. My name is Noel Joshua Hadley, and of course, this is the Unexpected Cosmology. And hold on here. I was hoping I could just run into this, but I'm seeing problems. All right. Well, I'm streaming live tonight on uh, Facebook, two different Facebook accounts, and of course, the YouTube Live. And I thought I was streaming on my X account, but apparently my X account is now, formerly Twitter, is giving me problems. But that's not your problem. That's my problem. I have to fix that at another time. Welcome, everybody, as you guys start coming in. And we're going to be going over tonight the hidden wilderness and the moon map, our greater realm. One of the reasons being is that I get asked a lot of questions about this. Now, this is something I talked about. I can't believe 2 years ago now. Two whole years ago, I originally talked about this, and I was even talking about before that. But the paper I wrote, and so a lot of people are showing up now, and they're like, "What are you talking? What's the hidden wilderness?" Well, here's what I won't be talking about tonight. I will not be showing you scriptural passages which refer to the greater realm. It is all listed in my book, The Hidden Wilderness. You can go check that out for yourself. And I won't be talking about Elysian fields or the fact that the Essenes believe in the same thing. What is Elysian fields? The best way I could describe this is for everyone out there who has seen the movie Gladiator, the Ridley Scott one from 2000. They're coming out with the sequel this year. And in that one, you will recall that the movie is bookended at the beginning and the end, where the Russell Crowe character, he's going up against the German barbarians at the beginning, and it starts out with Hans Zimmer and a score with Lisa Gerrard singing, and it's very poetic, and you see this hand go along the wheat, and then you realize that it's kind of like it's really a vision that Russell Crowe's having, because at the end of the movie, everyone just cover your ears, la 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 la. Right now, if you haven't seen that, this is a movie spoiler. He dies, and he goes to Elysian fields. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, the Greeks, I should really say the ancients, believed that on the motionless plane that there was something called the greater realm. And they called it Elysian fields. And it was a place where it was a material realm. It's in our material realm, but only spiritual resurrected creatures can go there, with a few exceptions. There's good reasons for that. One is that the sun and the moon does not have its cycle there. It doesn't have its course. And there is a light there that is like an unending light, the light of the world. We know this to be Yahushua HaMashiach. So interestingly enough, the Essenes appear to have believed the same thing. And there is, of course, some great extra biblical books that talk about the greater realm. Won't be going over that tonight, but I just want to lay that out as an introduction for anyone out there who may not know what I'm talking about. Now, you're looking at a picture of the moon here. I have seen in my years with the flat Earth movement. It's funny to call it the flat Earth movement, right? Because it's geocentric and motionless. I've seen a lot of different proposed maps. Some people just pull up some random things, and it's speculative. That's all. That's what it is. There's no way to prove it. But I love the moon map to death. We'll be talking about it. I love the moon map. It's something that it's in the sky. It is a witness for us, and you could look up there and you could see the AE map up in the moon map, and you see the greater realm. It's unbelievable. And it can be, I think it can be tested. And so a lot of people, the moon map really hasn't taken off. And the big reason being is that so many people have died on the hill of claiming that the AE map, the flat Earth projection map, is, it's shill material. It's a gatekeeping device, all that kind of stuff. And they can't back down on these claims now to go, actually, it's literally up on the moon, like the AE map, the one that we've been saying, not me personally, but many people have been saying is shill material. It's literally up there on the moon. It's unbelievable. So when you start digging into the moon map. So with that, let's get right into it. Hope everyone is having a good time tonight. Hopefully you are. Hopefully I'm coming in nice and crisp and loud for you guys. Let me know if there's any problems. So, starting out on page 1 of the Hidden Wilderness Investigation, and by the way, I should have said this is also referred to as the Blessed Realm. Whenever you get into medieval literature, they talk about the Blessed Realm. And of course, in The Lord of the Rings, it's called the Undying Lands. Same thing, same place. So, starting out on page 1 of the Hidden Wilderness Investigation, I slipped in a picture of the moon, wondering who among my readers had already done their homework, knowing precisely where we were plotting course, and who were simply coming along for the 3-hour tour. As far as I'm concerned, the Hidden Wilderness can be found on a map, a very old map for sure, a map so tried and true that nobody is capable of tampering with it. Antichrists come and go. They can change the times here below, but the clock in the sky they cannot touch. It is also true that the map I am referring to is an outdated map, seeing as how Atlantis and Lemuria are not present nor accountable for at morning roll call. Now, just I did a whole paper on Lemuria, Mu, and Meru. I actually need to update it. One of the things that has really gotten my interest, this is not going to make sense to some of you right now, but in the Arctic Circle around the AE map are a series of continents. They're all icy now, but it appears with some older maps that you're actually seeing civilization on them. And I suspect that these are literally the ancient continents that were long talked about and are no more. But I digress. It is a map nonetheless. I'm showing it again so as to jog your memory. The map of our greater realm, in case you haven't caught on already, is the moon. Back in the dark ages, when we used to walk a mile uphill in the snow just to use the bathroom, I was fortunate enough to learn the trade of photography in an actual dark room. I am speaking to the kids in the room when I say this was before the present digital revolution, and therefore know precisely what's going on here. I actually had a young kid, he was very woke and liberated and illuminated, and he was trying to argue with me that digital has always been around, and that anyone older than him who claims that they were there to see the digital come in and that it used to be film, are like spooks and chills and that kind. I'm like, you're nuts, kid. I was there. We saw it. We were there. Well, I'm not saying that, maybe like far back in history, they had digital. Okay. But we were there. We saw it. We went from black and white TV to colored TV. Right. And of course, I learned the trade of photography in the actual dark room, where you take these negatives and you actually put them in chemicals and you put the paper in there and you so on and so forth. You let it dry and the image comes out. That is not the moon right there. That is not a positive image of the moon that you are looking at, but a negative one. Let me just scroll back up here and show you this right here. There you go. I'm purposely showing a negative image in case you were wondering. If you did happen to miss out on the 90s or any decade prior to the 90s, the 80s or before, 70s, and can't recall the excitement of the shopping mall food court, or picking up your envelopes containing 24 to 36 Kodak photos at the local 1-hour development lab, not knowing which were of last year's family vacation or of grandma blowing out her birthday candles, then allow me to explain. And that was actually a thing, like you would go on vacation, you'd have all these rolls of film, and you kind of very often you went to develop them all at the same time. And, you had you would open up one roll and you're like, oh, it's just grandma. It's like 12 pictures of grandma, blowing out her birthday candles. And then people opening up their gifts and stuff like that. And then maybe at the end, you have a couple really interesting ones of your vacation. In photography, negatives are the images imprinted on long plastic strips. They're the actual rolls of film that are unwound from the film canister after having been loaded within the belly of the camera. Each negative is transparent. You have to hold them up to the light in order to see the image within, but everything is reversed. The lightest areas on a negative appear darkest in the actual photo once developed, whereas the darkest areas appear the lightest. If you are a white person, such as myself, then my skin would be black and the pupils of my eyes very white. So you would see like these really like glaring white. It almost looks like nighttime photography with like wild animals, right? I have these like white eyes and I'm, darker skin. This reverse order occurs because the extremely light sensitive chemicals a camera film must use to capture an image quickly enough are darkened rather than bleached by exposure to various degrees of light. In the case of color negatives, the colors are also reversed into their respective complementary colors. The irony here is that the negative I showed you regarding the moon isn't its true negative. No, it should be the positive. Take another look at the picture I'm referring to. The light areas of the quote unquote negative denote land, whereas the dark areas constitute water. Contrarily, what you are staring at in any given night sky is its negative, if that makes any sense to you. So this is like a reverse negative. But all these light areas here should be land. And of course, the dark areas here are water. And if this is actually also flipped, it should be flipped vertically. I'm sorry, it should be flipped horizontally. And the area over here on stage left is actually our realm, but it should be flipped horizontally onto the other side. So the moon's an interesting thing. Do you know what else can also be viewed as a negative image? I've already given you the answer. The Shroud of Turin is a negative. The Shroud of Turin is amazing, by the way, unparalleled and impossible to replicate. I actually just spoke on this about 3 weeks ago. As far as I'm concerned, it is residue of the Millennial Kingdom left here as testimony, though its story has been scrubbed. People will try to disprove it, but they cannot. All they can do is really hate. I mean, people cannot disprove the shroud. I'm not going to go off on this tonight, but you'll hear all the time, they'll say, that's a graven image. That's a graven image. It's actually not a graven image because a graven image can only be made by man. And so what they're saying is they don't want to tell you it's a hoax. They don't want to tell you it was made by man because they can't prove it. So they try to just skip over that, call it a graven image, hope you don't notice. But it can't possibly be a graven image if it was not made as an art piece by the hands of man, by any kind of artisan. If it is, in fact, a result of the resurrection, it is a natural occurrence and a document or testimony to that. Disclaimer. None of this will make any sense if you're still hung up on the moon being a hunk of rock held in place by a gravitational pull in an ever-expanding vacuum of space, complete with an American flag and Neil Armstrong's boot prints. LOL. I don't think too many of my viewers are there. I did talk about, I think last week, I went to the Smithsonian, and you can go see Neil Armstrong's actual Apollo 11 spacesuit there. And they have the famous picture of the footprint right next to where he's standing, but they put the boot so close down to it, kind of to the side. So they don't want you to look at the boot print that it doesn't actually line up with the footprint. But you can get down there on your hands and knees. You can look in there and go, okay, clearly that doesn't line up. Now, what they will tell you if you go to the misinformation, the fact checking sites like Reuters or whatever, they will tell you there that, well, yeah, we don't actually, the boot print doesn't match up, they'll admit to it. But they'll say, well, he had like an outer boot that before they got back into the Apollo 11 capsule, they actually tossed their boots onto the moon. And, the way I'm thinking about this is like, well, wait a second. If you're actually wearing all of this equipment on the moon for your safety and protection, because you're in a vacuum of space on the moon is a lot less gravity than on the Earth, correct? A lot more elements, maybe radiation. Also, you have to go through the Van Allen belt, all sorts of stuff. Seems to me that you would want to leave on everything that you were used for protection on the moon. But who am I to, I guess, ask that question? Whatever. Let's keep going. We'll be here all night at this rate. The moon is a focused electromagnetic phenomenon called plasma. Now, it's something worth looking into. I think it's the case. Could be wrong about this. Another way of stating the obvious is that we live in an electrical realm, which is 100% true, in my opinion. Cosmic electromagnetic energy is passed back and forth between the flat, motionless plane below and the firmament above via the ether and the stars and all of that. I could just show you a bunch of pictures of, say, fruit and you look at the inside of fruits and you look at all the wild designs in fruits and just nature in general, and actually look at how like they match up with the stars and other shapes like and patterns up there. I think it's replicating the energy that's coming down. The inner reflection of this electromagnetic energy on our ceiling turns it back down, creating a focus spot point. At this point, there is an observable fluorescence of the ether because of the focused cosmic electromagnetic energy. And the spot that is created is the moon. So I'll be talking more about this, about how the moon appears to be, how there was a kind of a snapshot that was taken of the earth below that was imprinted on the moon, whatever the moon is. I don't know if the moon is physical, like you could touch it. I don't think it'd be landed upon. Or is it like a illusion type of thing, like a light up on a ceiling? I don't really know. I do believe that the moon is a divine being, a spiritual. Definitely believe that. I believe there's a conscious being behind it, but that's a whole nother discussion. But anyways, that was wordy, wasn't it? Good roadside directions are hard to come by. Let's see if I can break this down in simpler language. Starting again. To better understand the moon, we likely need to venture back to our magnetic north, namely the little place called Hyperborea. It is there we can expect to find a magnetic rock, the heart's desire of our every compass. Now, I'm kind of speculative if that magnetic rock is still there or if it has moved. That too is another discussion, but it will play into what we cover. Though it is true that magnetic north is on the move, it is my personal thesis that the moon was created on the fourth day of creation, along with the suns and the stars, which is a given for most of you. And the Hyperborea, or that Hyperborea, was true north at the moment in his story. Yes, it is on the move, and that is a good thing. Explaining why is the intended purpose of this paper. For those of you who do tune into my Torah portions, I'm going to be rolling it back in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. We're going to start with Genesis chapter 1, and I won't be going through Torah portions. I'm just going to be going through chapters of the Bible, just taking my time. I'm going to be taking a lot of time with the creation account, and I will be showing in Genesis chapter 1 that there doesn't appear to be a lot of creation words, even though we say everything was created in the first week. There doesn't appear to be a lot of creation words. There's a lot of emphasis on maybe like storehouses or the earth is being replenished after it was destroyed. But the one thing that can be shown is that the sun and the moon were created on the fourth day. They are clear. There was no sun and the moon. If there was an old sun and the moon, they were destroyed. Don't know what happened to them. There was a sun and the moon created on the fourth day. And that's really important to this discussion. The ancients spoke of a whirlpool tying us in with Leviathan and the abyss, something I just talked about last Friday night. No time to go into that now. In the abyss, we shouldn't be surprised to discover a magnetic coil. That seems logical. Really, it's not like we're talking about some decorative barbershop pole on a floating iceberg. Any form of an intense electromagnetism would naturally produce strong radiation. My entire point here is that it is quite possible that our plasma moon is the result of radiation, but in the form of an X-ray. X-rays are a penetrating form of high-energy electromagnetic radiation. Like so many other advances in modern science, X radiation was quote-unquote discovered. I don't know if you can see my bunny ears right here. I'm not a crook. They were discovered in the post-mud flood era by our controllers. A lot of Pulitzer prizes are being rolled out at that time. Or I should say Nobel prizes. Excuse me. 1895 to be exact was when X-rays were discovered. His name was Wilhelm Röntgen, and he was a Nobel Prize winner. There it is, of course. In this scenario, however, the X-ray is emanating from a vortex in the center of our realm, rising upwards towards the ether in divergent, though invisible lines. Those beams continue until coming into contact with the firmament itself. The beams of an X-ray differ from light beams in that they do not reflect off mirrors the same way that visible light does. Because of their high energy, X-ray photons that strike a mirror directly will penetrate into the mirror in much the same way that bullets aimed directly at a surface will bury themselves in it. X-rays are a kind of super powerful version of ordinary light, a high energy form of electromagnetic radiation that travel at the speed of light in straight lines, just like light waves do. But because their wavelengths are shorter than that of ordinary light, it means their frequency is much higher. Because of this, an X-ray can travel through objects that ordinary light cannot. Still following? There are not many materials that can reflect or scatter the beams of an X-ray. Turns out crystalline structures do. It would take Pink Floyd, or scratch that, William H. Bragg, an Australian-born British physicist and X-ray crystallographer, to make that fact known in 1912 via Bragg's law of X-ray diffraction. And what is crystalline but the firmament, most likely? There is much to be discovered, but what seems apparent is that the firmament and our perception of the moon are in direct relationship with the other. Now, quickly on the firmament, I think that the firmament is solid in the middle, but I almost wonder if, like, on the edges, it's almost like gelatin or something, like kind of like a padded wall. Like you can't get through. Imagine if you're like in a nut house and there's a padded wall to keep you in. And you're slapping yourself up against. You're not getting hurt. But you can't get through the wall because it's not just padding. There's a hard wall there. And I wonder if that can explain some of the things we're seeing where when ships go high enough up there and we're seeing them perhaps kind of glide along the firmament, and it's almost like you see a wake behind it. Or there was even that footage from 10 years ago almost now of the rocket that shot up and then it just went think, kind of just was stuck up there. It's kind of interesting. Fun fact, Bragg was the director of the Cavendish Laboratory, Cambridge, when the discovery of the double helix DNA structure was reported by Watson and Crick in 1953. Ridiculous, since we already know the Millennial Kingdom residents of Chateau de Chambord were well aware of the coiling double helix. And of course, the coiling double helix goes way back before that as well. I made that joke about Pink Floyd several lines ago, but was it really? Their most popular album cover depicts Bragg's crystalline light as viewed through a monochromator. And yet it is called the dark side of the moon. Truth in plain sight is more like it. A monochromator, in case you were wondering, is an optical device that transmits a mechanically selectable narrow band of wavelengths of light, or rather radiation chosen from a wider range of wavelengths available at the input. FYI, I lifted that definition from Wiki, just so you know. There's the link right there. You can go look at it. Point is, of course, I'm showing you I'm not making this stuff up, right? I'm just showing you, okay, these are the definitions of these different things. Point is, a reflecting monochromator uses a single prism to redirect light. I've added a photo so that you can see how an X-ray beam would do just that in such an optical device. I feel like something's shaking here on my desk. I think it's my coffee mug. The redirected beams of an X-ray in the crystalline firmament probably explains what we are looking at in the moon and why it is a composite image. Yep, multiple pictures laid over the other. Of course, that's what a composite is. That right there is a composite for you. You just take a moment to look at that. It's amazing. There are at least two fixed images that I can see. The most obvious is the skeletal land masses as seen from the perspective of an X-ray. That would be on stage left. Some of you may have already noticed that the map is flipped from how we would naturally perceive it on any given full moon. That's because it is first and foremost a reflection, a mirror image of the continents below. That makes sense. And then I'll be kind of reading this, but take a good look up the right over here. And, this is like the famous like Billy Button of the moon right here. And this is what gives the moon its spherical rather than disc-like. I think it's disc, but it's round. It's a disc, but this is what gives it its spherical shape that makes it look the moon like a type of planet. The second image appears to be the firmament itself. The two images, when superimposed upon the other, depict a precise moment in time in a pre-diluvian world. You will recall that the firmament was formed on the second day of creation to separate the waters below from the waters above. The land rose above the waters on the third day, or rather, the water sunk below the land, and the moon, as I've already stated, was created on the fourth. My best guess is that the land masses, as well as the firmament, were captured and imprinted upon the moon at the precise moment of her high energy birth. We are seeing the signature of Yahweh Alahayam during the creation week. Now, if you're confused about that name right there, then in modern Hebrew, you might say Yahweh or Yahweh or Yahuwah. This is the paleo course here at the Unexpected Cosmology. We are a publisher of paleo translations of the Bible. So that helps explain that. Yahweh is his name in paleo. How exciting is that? And of course, Alahayam is, in modern Hebrew, you would say Elohim, but in the paleo, you would say Alahayam. So now you guys all know why I stress that. That's his original name, as told to Moses and the original Hebrew writers. Yahweh Alahayam. Undoubtedly, the firmament's skeleton is captured from a different angle than its vertical capture of the land masses. We are told the belly button on the moon, for example, is a crater called Tycho, though in this scenario, it represents the vortex at the highest point of the dome. So the very center of our realm. So look at this again. So there it is. There's Tycho, the crater or whatever on the moon that is the belly button shape, but that's actually the very center of our realm. I guess you could say even Polaris. You can actually see the rays stemming out from it like hemispherical ribs. Stop and think about it. The moon is the only known image of the firmament that we have. It is the firmament which gives the moon its spherical appearance. Now, Tycho was named in 1651 in honor of the Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe by somebody named Giovanni Riccioli. I checked, Riccioli was a Jesuit. Another astronomer to name the crater was Frenchman Pierre Gassendi. He called it Umbilicus Lunaris, which literally translates to the navel of the moon. How adorable. Arthur C. Clarke chose Tycho in his novel 2001: A Space Odyssey, which you can see a picture of the movie right there, by Stanley Kubrick, of course, to describe a strong magnetic field emanating from the crater. It is in Tycho where they discovered a black cube monolith, which is one of the central plot points of the movie, the source of the magnetic field. Again, adorable. And they're telling you that this black magnetic cube is the kind of the source of all creation. It keeps showing up and recreating the earth, which is just interesting because while they're pulling a personal God out of the equation, there's perhaps a lot of truth to what they're actually stating. Interestingly enough, they're just masking it. In 1965, some four shallow years before the Apollo moon landing hoax, the elite drug American astrophysical professor Among R. Foster, before the media delivered the truth on the matter, but then debunked it in the process. Now I dropped a link to his interview right here. You could if you're following along with the paper, there's a few here. The interviewer asked Professor Foster to explain his theory, and here is his response. So these are his actual words in the interview. It is rather more than a theory. 10 or 11 years ago, I stated to various scientists that the moon is not a piece of rock, but it is plasma, a plasma phenomena, cosmic plasma, and that this fact will eventually be confirmed. And the irony here is that if you want to call it ironies, I believe that prediction will be made true. It will be confirmed eventually. Eventually, they can't hold it up forever. Eventually, the lie will be exposed. I made certain predictions which were already confirmed in 1958, and the situation now is coming close to a complete confirmation. Ouch, because he's 4 years away from just being just slaughtered in the media. And in fact, that's what I was getting. They're rolling this guy in front of the cameras just to debunk the truth. The interviewer then asked Foster what the results of his theory will be if he is proved correct, in which Foster says the following: the results will be profound and decisive because it will give proof as a complete reinvestigation of the laws of nature is necessary, because if the moon is a plasma, no man will ever land on it. The self-landing attempts will all fail. I actually wish I could get some sort of interview from this guy. Was he ever talked to again after this? After the Apollo missions, he was kind of old. I don't know how long he lived. Did he recant his theory and say, I was wrong about everything, I'm the fool? Or was he like, yeah, they're lying to us on the news? If only we could know. Well, that turned out exactly as Foster predicted. The Apollo 8 astronauts orbited the moon in 1968 and were like, we were wrong, and Professor Foster was totally legit all along. The moon is made of plasma. Guess we can't land on it. Better let our employers in on the bad news. Continuing, and this is him talking again. That means that the mass of the moon is far less than is currently assumed. It's in a different state of energy, and it has far less mass. That means there is no more explanation for the tides. If the moon, for example, had only 1,000 part of its current mass, then the tides would only be 2 inches high. And that means that if it is proof that the moon is a plasma, then all gravitational theories are out, and the new concept of the cosmos and of its laws has to be evolved. Of course, the moon causing the tides is still like the stupidest. Like it doesn't match up with anything in reality. They don't challenge it. They don't press it, because what are they going to do about it? What Foster appears to be saying is that the space race was misdirection, when in fact everything we know about the laws of science as well as the greater realm is wrong, and our current controllers can't have that. Best to debunk him with a hoax. Well, there's another guy. Foster wasn't the only one. 1 year earlier, in 1964, Joseph A. Bodner, a graduate mechanical draftsman and a pioneer in the X-ray field, was interviewed by the media for his dedicated research to the idea that the moon was a reflection of the Earth, only to be defeated by Buzz and the gang. He quite literally claimed the same thing I'm saying. Water shows white, whereas the land is black, thereby indicating there is much more land out there than we are being told. Hold on, guys. Let me mute this. All right. I often forget to do that when I go live, and then a lot of people are writing me messages, and this goes ding, 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 ding. Anyways, looks like Apollo and company proved him wrong as well. Bummer, which is precisely why they rolled his story out, in case you were wondering. There are those who will say that Bodnar and Foster were shilling for NASA, but I am of the opinion that the military-industrial complex wanted to make an example of anyone who dared to go against the official narrative, humiliating them and their ideas. I mean, I think it is easier to, instead of rolling out shills and wasting good resources on these individuals who could be placed elsewhere, it's easier just to take individuals who are actually pursuing the truth and make public examples of them and humiliate them. Way easier to do. Flat Earthist Samuel Shenton, who I simply adore, and he's a particular favorite of mine. It was the 60s, and people want to say he was shilling too. Like, why? I mean, if he was shilling, then every flat earthist is. You might as well just go after every flat earthist. They're all shilling, all for the government. They're all working for him. It was in the 60s, and the Mercury as well as the Apollo missions were at hand, which is why he was dragged out for the ridicule of the media. I actually say the masturbatory ridicule, because that's what it was. People were self-pleasuring themselves on this idea that somebody out there believed the Earth was flat. Can you believe it? It's the 1960s, and we're going, it's the space race against Russia, and this guy is still living in the dark ages. Like, somebody needs to educate. Has he never read a book? Somebody needs to educate him. Many modern flat earthers call this guy a shell, as I just said, but it just goes to show they haven't put their name, face, and home address, namely their necks, on the line. Shinton employed Alexander Gleason's 1893 AE map of the known realm, complete with an Antarctic ice ring. I will go into more detail a little later down the turnpike, and when I do, you will see that everyone from the UN and the WHO, the World Health Organization, to Marilyn Monroe, all employ the AE map for their purposes, which in large part is why some are calling Shinton a spook. Alexander Gleason was a card-carrying flat earthist. His map is considered controlled opposition. And depending upon which modern flat earthist you speak to, basically every flat earthist before them, after them, and around them is a spook, telling us that they may in fact be the ones who are projecting. And why am I even saying this is because you have to deal with this out there on the internet. Why am I putting such an emphasis on Shinton and the AE map now? Well, you will tell me it's because I'm being defensive and I have something to hide. No, it's because Gleason's AE map is also found fully unfolded in the night sky. Your issue is with the moon, not me. Actually, come to think of it, that is the very reason as to why so many are refusing to pay the moon map any mind. It's because they have toiled so long to name call anyone who had Gleason's I can never pronounce it. That's why I just call it the AE map, the equestrian projection at their disposal, that they'd rather die on that hill than admit the moon map is an incredible testimony to the shape of the earth as well as the greater realm. Look, shill talk is secondary to the reality that our controllers chose Shinton's research for an explicit purpose. Why they would go to such great lengths to perpetrate a flamboyant royal hoax such as the Apollo 11 moon landing can best be explained in the ideas they were attempting to silence. I mean, think about it that way, right? For however far they go to one extreme, there's going to be a balancing act on the other. There's something they're trying to dismiss, to get you to turn away from. Shinton's flat, motionless plane is one of them. It's not like Bodnar didn't share his reasons as to why he wanted to wake his fellow Americans up to the moon mirror reality. In his words, to save the taxpayers from $5 to $20 billion, which NASA says it would require for the Apollo moon landings. Unbelievable. Bodnar threatened to pinch the pockets of our pimps and handlers, and they can't have that. Foster, Bodnar, and Shinton, all three of them, though there were others, those are just the three I decided to talk about, were simply carted out for 5 minutes to show us what the ancients knew perfectly well to be true. A map of our realm could be located within the firmament, and I found one such example to prove it. I guess it turns out I am going to be talking about a little scripture tonight. This comes from the book of Jasher, or Yashar. And Benjamin beheld that instrument with the map of the stars of heaven, and he was wise and looked therein to know where his brother was. And Benjamin divided the whole land of Mitzrayim into 4 divisions, and he found that he who was sitting upon the throne before him in the very room was his brother Joseph. And Benjamin wondered greatly. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, he's like looking for where his brother is. His brother is with him in the room right now. He doesn't know that's his brother. He looks up at the stars and he goes, oh my goodness. According to the stars, he sees a map up there. My brother's in the room with me. Now, it doesn't outright say the moon is a map, nor are we told what the instrument is, which he beheld to track down the whereabouts of his brother Yosef. Don't you wish we had one of those? Actually, this entire scene might be better relegated to my doppelganger research, seeing as how he may have been seeking out his brother's other. Benjamin's sleuth skills are nonetheless impressive, no? They were seated at the same table, both brothers, and Benjamin hadn't the faintest clue that the Egyptian was his brother until he gazed up at the night sky and tracked his coordinates, to the very room he was standing in, no less. In explaining all of this, Benjamin is declared to be wise. Even in ancient times, very few people were wise, meaning that not everyone was capable of reading their skies like GPS. Now, We Three Kings happens to be a Mandela effect, but let's not get distracted. That's a link to my favorite We Three Kings. As they too searched out Mashiach, that would be the Messiah, using star coordinates. Perhaps it is true that only some of the ancients could comb the heavens, but none of them believed the Earth was a globe. Well, there you have it. The moon map in all her glory. Gleason's AE map is fully accounted for, but then so is our greater realm. You thought I was making this up, didn't you? Well, I wasn't. The moon is a map. It's true, all of it. Just look at that beauty, why don't you? The straight road pertaining to the elves of Middle Earth, which I spoke about in the Undying Lands, should make perfect sense by this point. You have to sail beyond the imaginary curve to reach the flat world of old. I spy far too much land to fit on any one decorative globe they sell at Target. No wonder why they created the heliocentric globe Earth narrative. It wasn't simply to make everyone dizzy and unaware of heaven and throne physically above us, but also to blindfold us to the blessed realm, as testified to by some of the other papers I wrote on this, the Hidden Wilderness in Paul, and of course the Cosmological World of the Essenes, which I started out talking about. If you're confused, don't be. I will be your tour guide through this. Our portion of the realm is located within the circular red lines on the right. So come up here, you can see it right here. What I'm going to be talking about tonight for the remainder of our discussion is I'll show this here, our realm. The greater realm is outside these red lines. And the circuit of the sun, the moon, goes around here, around magnetic north. And so all this land over here on the right, this larger crescent, would be in total darkness, just ice and just uninhabitable, with an exception, of course, as even all the ancients believed that there was a light there that was eternal. Our portion of the realm is located, as I just mentioned, within the circular red lines on the right, denoting the circuit of the sun and the moon. A closer look will be given on in a minute here on the next page. Nearly everything outside those lines makes up the potential land masses for the blessed realm. Quite the hunk of real estate, too. It's probably difficult to read, but the name of the largest continent, according to this map, is Terra Vista. And you could fit North and South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and Antarctica in it and still have room to stretch out. That's how big the greater realm is. So how many resurrected saints presently live there? And of course, you could take the whole population of the earth today, and I think you could fit them comfortably in the state of Florida, definitely in the state of Texas. So, I mean, I'm just saying that there is plenty of room to stretch up there. So here's a bunch of close-ups here, different snapshots of the moon map, and you could see how our realm is perfectly preserved there. North America, South America, there's Russia, Siberia, Canada, Australia, so on and so forth. Of course, the Lumeria over here, what he notes as Lumeria is actually what he claims is Antarctica. Kind of interesting. Now, credit is due to Vibes of Cosmos. All right. So somebody is going to put this in the comment section. You need to go out. Yeah, please go watch Vibes of Cosmos. He does great research. And I don't want to take a squat all over his research. And this is his this is like his research. He puts all this stuff into the moon map, and so he should be credited for it. Without his work, I wouldn't be given most of this presentation tonight. And like I said, he did the backbreaking work on this, not me. I'm just the courier. And so now that you have received the package, I'll give you a minute to comb through the stunning details of our realm as depicted on the moon. I mean, I just showed you. I spied Russia, Japan, Morocco, Madagascar, Spain, the UK, Canada, the United States, and Mexico. The existence of Hyperborea, precisely as Mercator envisioned it, has me excited. The lost continent of Lemuria is positioned east of Australia and India, precisely where it was hypothesized to be by our post-mud flood inheritors. I've already linked you to that report, but we'll do so again. There's my paper right there called The Land of Eden, if you're following along with the paper. How in the world any of this can be explained by sheer coincidence is beyond me. No pun intended. It's all there and more. The Red Sea is perfectly where it ought to be. Even the Black Sea is accounted for. And then here's the greater realm right here, also known, according to this map, as Terra Vista. Though, if I were to name it, I'd call it the Blessed Land or the Hidden Wilderness, probably the Blessed Land. Before I get carried away with the particulars of our known realm, I probably needn't remind you that our present investigation involves the hidden wilderness, the land beyond the reaches of the sun and the moon. On this map, we know it as Terra Vista. Residents of the Blessed Realm undoubtedly refer to it by another name, but seeing as how Terra Vista essentially means land with a pleasant view, I won't argue. Some have claimed the unseen land is a wasteland of darkness and ice, of chaos in the void, and therefore uninhabitable. Such a place is even recorded in Enoch, wherein we read the following. This comes from chapter 17 of Enoch. I saw every large river until I arrived at the great darkness. I went to where all of flesh migrate, and I beheld the mountains of the gloom which constitutes winter, and the place from which issues the water in every abyss. I saw also the mouths of all the rivers in the world, and the mouths of the deep. How interesting is that? This idea that all flesh migrates there. And I'm becoming more and more convinced that there is a type of journey that happens after we die. I don't know if we're on ships. I don't know if we walk or swim or what, but there is some sort of journey to the land of the dead, the blessed realm on this earth. Even if we go to heaven above or paradise, wherever it is, everyone has their different views on this. Even, both sides read from the same Bible, right? Pray to the same God. But if you guys saw my last Torah portion last week, going through Deuteronomy, and I put for the cover all these pictures of these people just like coming up to the land after wading through the water, and they're exhausted, and but this idea that once you finally get to the blessed land, the blessed realm, you finally make it after your pilgrimage, your journey, you're just exhausted. You're so excited to be there. Enoch testifies to a mountainous land of endless gloom in winter, but then look at what it is in connection with the place where all flesh ends up. He is inferring to a migration of souls, the entryway to Sheol. Another hint is given when he notes the place from which issues the water in every abyss. I am more inclined to conclude he is speaking of Hyperborea, the location of our magnetic north. And anyways, the gloom of winter would certainly be an accurate description of any water or land mass beyond the circuit of the sun, where there's no heat, obviously, or light. And the ice wall, I will get to that in a little while. But first, I will remind you of the accounts given to us in Scripture regarding light of a different nature. I am speaking, of course, of the light which was flipped on for the first day of the creation week, though the sun wouldn't show up for another few days. And you probably already know where I'm going with this. And yet I have learned never to assume. So we read over here on the left, this is in John chapter 1, and it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and Elohim was the Word. The same was in the beginning with Elohim. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. All right, jumping over to Revelation 21. And the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of Elohim did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. So I'm not going to be going over tonight why I believe New Jerusalem, or Renewed Jerusalem, the brick and mortar Jerusalem, is actually coming down in the hidden wilderness. In fact, I am of the opinion that it has already come down. It's already there. There's a lot that goes into that. People are like, why can't I look out my window and see it? Well, it's because actually Yah surrounds himself with darkness. The best example I can give of this is when there's a lot of examples in Scripture, but the best example I can give is when Pharaoh is pursuing Moses to the Red Sea, and he's cornering him there. He's at the mountain of Baal Zephon, and they're trapped, and Yah comes down in the pillar, and to Israel it's pure light. It's just like this fiery light, and to Pharaoh it's total darkness. And so that's the idea, that he puts darkness around this light so that he is disclosed from unholy men. And there are actually scripture verses that talk about this very thing in the context of the hidden wilderness, namely the visions of Paul. Yahushua HaMashiach was the light at the beginning. And some will claim Yochanan, that's John, as speaking merely of an esoteric light, an inward spark, if you will. That may be so. But John slash Yochanan has so much more on his mind. Revelation helps to clear things up. And why I drop both passages side by side. It's in renewed Yerushalayim where we come to learn that the Lamb is the electrical wiring for the entire establishment. Not to say that the sun and the moon are done away with. They're simply no longer required. You will tell me my theory is bonk if the context is New Jerusalem and the city hasn't come down yet. No, it isn't. For the record, I am of the opinion that renewed Yerushalayim likely has come down. My opinion on the timing of its arrival is irrelevant, though, whether it's come down yet or not. Just because the Lamb is the light inside the city doesn't mean he ceases to be a light outside of the city. Where Yahusha goes, so goes the lamp. And then look at what else we read in Legends of the Jews. This is actually really interesting. The light created at the very beginning is not the same as the light emitted by the sun, the moon, and the stars, which appeared only on the fourth day. The light of the first day was of a sort that would have enabled man to see the world at a glance from one end to the other. Take that, Bill Nye. Anticipating the wickedness of the sinful generations of the deluge and the Tower of Babel, who were unworthy to enjoy the blessing of such light, God concealed it. But in the world to come, it will appear to the pious in all its pristine glory. Whenever you hear in any kind of Jewish rabbinical literature, Talmudic, if you will, and they talk about the world to come, they're always referring, it's the same thing as the millennial kingdom, the 1,000-year reign. The light of creation was a sort of quality which enabled men to see the world at a glance from one end to the other. No more atmospheric lensing. You could stand on the shoreline of California and wave a good day, mate, to someone in Australia. Sounds like fun times. It's all rather awkward if the Earth was a globe, seeing as how there's apparently a curve just beyond the horizon and all. Must have had eyes that matched those elven ships if they were expected to see from one end of the Earth to the other, wink, wink. Meaning that the view from Terra Vista today must be spectacular indeed, because look at what else we read. In the world to come, the light of creation will appear to the pious in all its pristine glory. Not to the impious, though. Just the pious. Amazing. It's no wonder why the hidden wilderness won't be disclosed until the sinners are snuffed out into the darkness of their design. Many Antarcticas. I think I'm going to kind of skim through this tonight because I think that a lot of my audience, you guys are well aware of Antarctica, how the ring works. This beginning is kind of interesting. Let me talk about this. In reply to the individual requesting some years ago, 2016, I think it was, that I write a paper on Antarctica's location in the flat Earth realm, this is for you. I have finally gotten around to it, but sadly not before the second decade of the 20th century came to an end. But then I would have shown a picture of the AE projection map, particularly the proposed outer ring of the world, and then called it a day. Of course, right there, Marilyn knew. I've looked at this and I go, is this picture faked? Like, did she not really hold that up? And it's kind of a low quality image. But I haven't seen it challenged, interestingly enough. Now, some of you are thinking there can't possibly be an Antarctic ice wall if the moon map is the case. The moon map is totally legit and they're both anatomically correct. I'll do my best to show you why that is. Firstly, the firmament exists, and the firmament is circular at its base if the moon map and tons of other research is anything to go by. Conventional wisdom has Antarctica being that circular base, though obviously we were being too small-minded when we were saying that it was just this, ring around the Earth. And then the firmament touches down there. The dragon swept a third of the stars from heaven in Revelation 12:4 and flung them to the earth. What is 1/3 but 33? Oh dear. The beginning rank of any true Freemason is the 33 number. And so if I had to take a wild guess, I might say the AE map makes up 33% of the greater realm. It's a shot in the dark, I know, but I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised if that turns out to be true. And then I put a post edit here. It is true. All of it. My thought about our entire known realm being only 33% of the greater whole. I scrambled upon the following passage here in the Legends of the Jews, Volume 1, and this is what it says. It takes 500 years to walk from the earth to the heavens, and from one end of a heaven to the other. And by the way, this is also going to be talking about the 7 layers of heaven. So there are literally 7 heavens above us, and these worlds might be way bigger than our own realm. I mean, we could be like this like central pillar, you know, and the layer above us could be 100 times bigger, right? They just keep getting, you know, we don't know how huge these are. And it takes the same length of time to travel from the east to west or from the south to the north. Of all this vast world, only 1/3 is inhabited, the other 2/3 being equally divided between water and waste desert. Religions of the Jews, Volume 1. And just by the way, when you talk about wastelands, right, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's uninhabitable. It could, but it doesn't mean it. It doesn't mean that. And there you have it. Read it and weep, the 33 number. And then the other 2/3 constitute a desert wasteland, the hidden wilderness that we've been seeking. So you guys all know here about Barack Obama. You know, we don't have United Nations. We don't have time for the Flat Earth Society. That was one of the things that really got my attention when he was saying that during his presidency. And he kept saying it like all the time. I don't even know if he knew why he was saying it. I kind of think he was kind of just like given these, given these lines, fed these lines, and he just said it like kind of, barked it like a pet. But you can see right there, the United Nations, this is the World Health Organization. Of course, you see the AE map, you see the laurel wreath around it, meaning that they have their control over this portion of the earth, the 33%. And of course, you see the snake there, the staff of Hermes, all that. I won't go through all these scriptures because you guys are pretty aware of it by this point. And this is what I was talking about earlier with the, I've referenced this map so many times, and it's an incredible map. But what I like about Urbano Monte comes from a 1587. And of course, you guys know that the one in there is an I. So it's like I-587. That's a side note. But in this map, he doesn't show Antarctica to be all ice. He actually shows living creatures, and you could see that they're actually a series of continents. It's not a ring. And so I'm wondering if on this map, he actually shows at least a great portion of the hidden wilderness, the blessed land, and he's like smashing it, right? So it would be expanded way out, all the way up. They're just being smashed into this ring all the way around it. Kind of interesting thought. All right, let's get past all this stuff. You guys can read this for yourself. And so here, and this goes back to Vibes of Cosmos again. This was his work. He did a great job at showing how you can see our part of the realm here, right, kind of to the stage right. And he actually mapped out all the different bases on the globe Earth, Antarctica, all the different entities, Britain, America, Korea, Spain, Japan, I think Australia, whoever has a base here. And he actually showed where they all are perfectly down to the very mile on the moon map. Incredible. And so the idea of this ice ring, it's well, I'll show you. The ice ring, is going to move over time. And I am also now of the opinion that the idea of global warming, everyone's like, global warming is a hoax. Well, it is and it isn't, because there is studies out there that are showing that the earth is hardening and freezing and that the glaciers are getting bigger. But then there's also research showing that they're melting. You're like, what's going on here? Well, with what I'm going to show, for those of you who are new to this, that the sun and the moon actually move around the entire earth, but it takes like 27,000 years to do it. It's not something that is overnight, which means that true north will actually move over that same period, the sun through the zodiac, all that kind of stuff. But if the sun is moving on its circuits, going around and around and around and around, can you see my mouse? You can kind of see it. Yeah, if it's going around, 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 around over here, but it's in 12 to 15,000 years, it's going to be on the opposite end of the Earth. It's all going to be ice and darkness over here. You see what I'm saying? And so what's going to be happening is that you're always going to have, as the sun is pushing out, it's going to be melting over here as it goes around the clock, and it's going to be hardening behind it. So I just wonder about that maybe we're seeing both, the research of both instances happening. Of course, there's a quote here by Admiral Byrd. He says, strangely enough, there is left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being, and that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Little America. He's actually referring to, I don't think he's referring to Terra Vista over here on the left, where all these dots are with all these entities. I kind of think he's referring to that over there. There is a huge chunk of land that is traditional Antarctica, that is as big as North America. And you could see way over here, North America, like I'm on the East Coast of North America. So when I look out at the straight out east, I'm actually looking at just straight water. Like I would actually have to look to my north to look towards the hidden wilderness. And of course, it works out like on an AE map too. You have to fly to the north to get to Europe. All right. So now that I've kind of covered that right there, I'm skipping a little bit ahead just for lack of time. And the night is still young, just so you guys know. Moon map and the Prague clock. Fact of the matter is we do have an ice wall. It is not constantly fixed in the north and south poles of the globe model as we are taught, though. The location of our ice wall changes every so many hundreds or thousands of years, theoretically, and I stress here, theoretically, and at a crawling rather than breakneck speed, freezing new land in its path while simultaneously melting its hind trails as it moves along the outer edge of our realm. So try to explain something like this to the normies. It can't be done unless they are first willing to accept the reality of the flat Earth. The flat Earth is like just the breaking point of all truths. It just opens up the Pandora's box and everything comes out. The Prague astronomical clock, Yah willing, I'm going to take you guys on a tour of this next year. I want to go visit the Prague clock. It's on the deck of cards. It's on the schedule, the clipboard of fun to go to the Prague clock. And I will attempt to show you how it works according to the moon map. Now, allegedly installed in the quote unquote medieval age, 1412 to be exact, that would be the high Middle Ages. The Prague clock is located in the Czech Republic, and though not the first of its kind, is said to be the oldest surviving in the world, which is impressive. So there were clocks before this. It's just the oldest that has survived. It was built during the Dark Ages, and people still struggle to understand it, LOL. And of course, medieval is code word for the Millennial Kingdom. They knew. Well, anyways, the clock mechanism has three main components. There's the astronomical dial, representing the position of the sun and the moon in the sky. Statues of various saints, as well as a notable skeleton who represents death when striking the time, and a zodiac calendar dial representing the months. I've stated multiple times that death comes out of the medieval ages, and the idea of the Grim Reaper knocking on the door appears to originate with the plague of the Justinian plague of 541, when almost the entire world was eliminated within like 6 months' time. And the people that died were literally saying that they were visited by these spirits that would come and either whisper into their ear that their number was up, or they would tap them on the shoulder. And people were running into their homes and they were afraid to answer. They would hide in bed. And we have all these pictures, these paintings of people hiding in bed. And there would be a knock on their door and they wouldn't answer it for fear that it was death coming to get them. And so that was a real thing. At the outer edges of the clock face, golden Schwabaker numerals on a rotating ring present old Czech time, with 24 indicating the precise moment of sunset. Well, next we see Roman numerals displaying a repeated run of X11 or 12 for morning and afternoon hours. The sun and the moon are accounted for on the ecliptic. Look at where their dials meet. Hopefully everyone can see that picture there. They are fixed in place in the center of the clock, forming a cross, a Latin cross. The inner circle contained within that cross what is known as an ecliptic dial, carousels around the entirety of the clock face. Each zodiac sign represents a month of the year, with the vertical lines measuring 5 days. This is important because the zodiac is the clock face in the sky above us. Now, every year at the March equinox, the location of the sun within the zodiac determines what age we're currently inhabiting. There are, of course, 12 constellations of the zodiac if you need a refresher. It takes roughly 2,150 years for the sun to present itself among a new zodiacal, if you want to call that, constellation at the vernal equinox, which that's just a rough estimate, because the fact of the matter is, so this clock here, it's showing kind of that each of the constellations are equal in size. That's not actually true. That's not how it works out. Some constellations are much larger than others, meaning that the sun will stay in some ages longer than others. And the big question on everybody's mind is like with the age of Aquarius now, because believe it or not, the sun is actually it's not actually touching the actual stars in the constellation. It's in, the black part in between. So the question that everyone asks is, where do you constitute the beginning of one age and the end of another? And really, for most of biblical history, I would say most of post-Diluvian history, we've only been in 3 ages. Let's see if I could. We were in Aries, Pisces, and of course, I do think we're in Aquarius now. If you ever look into my Anunnaki research, I show that Aries was the age of Moloch, of Baal, according to the testimony of the Anunnaki, if their testimony holds any weight. But it's interesting because with the age of Pisces, the age of Aries was destroyed. And that is, of course, the age of Messiah, Yahushua HaMashiach. And the age of Pisces shows 2 fish. The age of Pisces was the age of the millennial kingdom. And I have noted, just when I was at the Smithsonian last couple weeks ago, and I showed that within the architecture, they're showing that they were in the age of Pisces, and they would show the 2 fish. And of course, the 2 fish are representative of the masculine and the feminine counterparts spiritually, the spiritual divine. And of course, you have the Holy Spirit right there, the Ruach HaKodesh being the feminine. So I like to tell everybody she's been here all along. All right, anyways, so the grand procession lasts about 25,800 years in total. So the difficulty, as I mentioned, is in determining precisely when one constellation boundary ends and another begins. But I am thinking was designed that way so that the ages do blend together. So it is possible that we have like 1 foot in the age of Aquarius and 1 foot in the age of Pisces, if that makes any sense to you. I think that actually makes a lot of sense. It's not like you just wake up one day and, oh yeah, that, it's like Happy New Year blowing, those little blowing things with the pointy hats, and the age of Pisces is over, right? It takes 50, 100, 200 years to kind of cross over from one to the next. The age of Aries was spoken about again in my Anunnaki Ancient Aliens paper, but then it is generally agreed upon that the sun passed from the constellation Aries to the constellation Pisces with the advent of Hamashiach, or Messiah, or perhaps even a century earlier before he showed up on the scene. The age of Pisces invokes the Vesica Piscis, the sacred divine. What is certainly true is that the sun has saluted us from Pisces throughout the span of Yahushua's earthly life, as well as the millennial kingdom, not forgetting the intervening years of the little season where we find ourselves now. And everybody is wanting to know if and when the sun has entered the age of Aquarius. Just one more thing on the Vesica Piscis. Again, I talk about that a lot because when we're looking at medieval architecture, the cathedrals, it is dripping. It is if you take the divine and freeze the divine into architecture, you're looking at feminine divine. It is all about the Holy Spirit. the Ruach HaKodesh, our mother in heaven. So the very idea of the Vesica Piscis. I have seen any number of dates suggesting the starting dates of the age of Aquarius being 2012. That's a popular one. Those are my thoughts as well. Now, some people are saying it won't show up for another couple hundred years. Some people thought it showed up, I don't know, 50 years ago, whatever, right? Some people think it won't happen for another couple decades. But I think 2012 is a really good date. If we're going to say an affirmed, we are now in the age of Pisces, even if we have one foot in one and the other, it's 2012. Of course, 2012 is the year that potentially started the singularity event, by which many parallel realities, like the one containing the Berenstain Bears, have begun to merge together. Quickly go over my Mandela effect with you guys. Where I'm at with this is that I don't necessarily see the Mandela effect as a negative thing. We all kind of start out with like the whole. I don't know what CERN is doing, okay, and I'm not making CERN out to be the good guys, because in no way they are the good guys. But what I think is happening is that we're having a multitude of parallel realities that are kind of converging into one current. Like, if you can imagine all these rivers coming together and dumping into a bigger river, and we're all coming from these. And so a lot of these things that we're looking at were actually real in another reality, like the wolf and the lamb, or the lion. For me, it was the lion and the lamb. It always was. But I have shown that there is actually good doctrine. There are historical texts that really break into the wolf and the lamb, and they show that there's a lot of great biblical research there. The three wise men are another favorites of mine, where during the Dark Ages, the Millennial Kingdom, they had this big thing on that they were three kings. There were two white guys and one black guy. They had names for them and everything. The song "We Three Kings" is basically based on the play of the three wise men of the three kings. And yet, in my Bible, I grew up with the reality of they were just magi from the east. But I never grew up with the "We Three Kings" reality. Some people claim they claim that they came from the three kings reality, that they remember reading in their Bible that there were three kings. I don't deny that. I think that that's very likely a reality. And so we're kind of like looking back at history, and we're seeing sometimes what we call residue is actually a bleeding together the two realities. And so we have this reality with the three wise men, that there is the magi reality, and that there is the three wise men reality, and they kind of dump together, and we have all these conflicting reports. Anyways, take the ecliptic dial off the Prague clock, apply it to the moon map, and what do we see? A wheel within a wheel. For starters, everything pivots in accordance with the location of true north, which in turn rotates around Polaris, the very center of our realm. The ring containing visible land masses represents the Arctic Circle that I was earlier reminding you of, and the circuit of the sun and the moon can be found within. Everything beyond the ring is the easily recognizable crescent moon, a popular symbol all over the world. I understand that there is crescent moon symbology that is identified with a feminine divine goddess that is the counterfeit Holy Spirit. But I think it's silly at the same time to say, well, the crescent moon is evil. It's like, no, it's not evil. It's up in my night sky. Just because the enemy the enemy cannot create anything. They can only take what is good, and they can corrupt it. So just because our controllers are using the crescent moon does not mean that the crescent moon is evil. That would be a ridiculous conclusion for anyone to come to. Anyways, let me read this again. Everything beyond the ring is the easily recognizable crescent moon, a popular symbol all over the world. That happens to be where the ice age resides at any given time. You guys following? At present, we find ourselves in the first picture right here. So you could see where the true north is right there. If you see what I'm pointing that in, and it would really be, I guess that would be right about where maybe true north is right now. And so true north, the idea is that it goes around on this pink circle. It swings around, and that within 12,000, 15,000 years, whatever, it's going to be down here on the bottom end, and the whole crescent moon is going to be flipped. Our side of the realm will be buried. And again, theoretically, within 30,000 years or less, There will be archaeologists digging up our society over here, and all the sorts of propaganda that goes along with it, and telling everybody about these ancient whatever, that maybe the ancient aliens, I don't know, whatever, the people who lived here, and they'll be making up stories about us. So in so many thousands of years, perhaps in the age of Capricorn or Sagittarius, the circuit of the sun and the moon will have rotated around to the illustration on the right, burying most of our known realm in ice and darkness. Those who insist the kingdom of heaven is eternal and that we therefore cannot possibly be post-millennial are only partially correct. Don't get me wrong, they're absolutely true on the first claim. The kingdom is eternal. I can't state this enough. The kingdom is within and will never be broken. All right. Jesus Christus, Jesus Christ, Yahushua HaMashiach, he is eternal. He is the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. It's said, it's done, it's final. That is also not to say its people aren't free to chase the warmer weather. My family hightails it to Florida every winter. Or in the case of our controllers, the set apart are free to pursue the light of Mashiach on the other end of the world. The kingdom still exists. And look out your window, why don't you? Ironically, it may just be our current sun with its endless platonic allegories, which actually proves to be the outer darkness after all. I'll be talking more about that tonight. Again, it takes something like 26,000 years, give or take so many decades, for the entire cycle to play out, apparently. That's nearly 4 separate creation weeks. If we're going by 7,000, the 7,000-year timeline deception. 3, if there are centuries of chaos and void between each reset event, which is what I seem to think. Whereas only darkness and the howling wind remains a constant. It makes you wonder if there truly are resets and renewed creation weeks every so many thousands of years, while magnetic north rotates the heavenly carousel around the moon face. Then how many earth-worn artifacts testify to the former inhabitants of our realm in the last go-round? Did you get that? So imagine if Genesis 1 is a recreation of it. That's my contention. That's what I believe. And so there was chaos, there was void, there was darkness. How long was the earth under darkness? Was it just a few days? Was it a couple years? Or could it have been 15,000 years? Could there have been some big destruction event? And then, this whole process happens with the moon map, and the sun and the moon go all the way around true north. It comes all the way around again, and then boom, recreation event. See what I'm saying? So when they're actually looking at some of these ancient, you can't see my bunny ear quotes, I guess, on this really thin camera, but when they're pointing out a lot of the ancient societies, are we possibly looking at something that really is, when they say this pottery is, I know, right? But when they're saying like this pottery is 30,000 years old or whatever it is, 60,000 years old. Well, that's all debatable. But at the same time, I'm kind of sitting here going like, okay, so what? So what if it is? Maybe it is. Maybe those are the former inhabitants of this earth. It's a possibility. Also, how do you suppose our controllers feel about this, knowing that their kingdom of dirt is destined to be discovered by a whole new regime of pimps and handlers in another 25,000 years or so? It's not like they can keep continent hopping and migrating with the magnetic wheel if what I'm insinuating about the hidden wilderness is true. Seems to me that the weather would be an important topic as it's about to get butt cold around here. The outer darkness. Here we go. Let's talk about this. I need a little bit more coffee. Give me a second here to refill. Need a little drink. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this. Everyone's having a good night or good afternoon or morning, wherever you are in the world on the motionless plane. Nearly every theologian on the planet, and that's not a typo or a Freudian slip or anything like that. Nearly every theologian on the planet will disagree with me regarding the whereabouts of the outer darkness. And no, that wasn't a glitch. The spinning, wobbling globe, which so many people hug to their bosom like comfort food or a nightlight, is that location, according to my best estimate. We're living in it, like the globe Earth. That's the outer darkness. Oh, I'm very willing to be wrong about this. It's not really something that I could know for certain. All I'm doing is putting the puzzle pieces together on flat Earth topography, and the picture sure is coming together nicely, if I do say so myself. I mean, this could be why another reason they created the global deception. They wanted to, of course, hide the kingdom that Mashiach is in. They wanted to hide New Jerusalem, but they wanted to hide the whole idea that we are literally in the outer darkness right now. Because of uncleanliness and transgressions of the Torah and things like that. Only recently, I asked you to pull the ecliptic dial off the Prague clock and lay it over the moon map, and what did we see? Only a portion of our greater Rome could be read at any given time. If you happen to lay it down upon its current coordinates, which is, say, in league with the circuit of the sun and the moon, then the circle of our known world remains visible, whereas the greater realm is concealed by the crescent. I don't know if you noticed, but the crescent moon just so happens to be one of the most common symbols in the game of heraldry. I have included 2 coat of arms directly over the chapter heading the outer darkness, or this section, just to start us off on the right foot. So you can look at these again if you didn't see them. And I mean, I could just pull up pages and pages worth of pictures, but they're everywhere. Of course, we see this here too. The symbol of Islam, the crescent. Most people will turn immediately to Islam, likely in protest, thinking what I'm trying to advocate can't be quite right, especially since the crescent moon is a cake topper decorating the domes of mosques across the Islamic world. Well, then the controllers of Islam have just as much right to play the controlled opposition game as the Pope of Rome. But there is something that you should know. Though it is true that the crescent is allied with Islam and regarded as its symbol, it is a recent association, thanks in part to the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century. Only afterwards did it become a symbol for Islam as a whole. That little known nugget of information only took me a moment to look up, by the way. Wikipedia lays it out in one of its articles. It says right there, the crescent is usually associated with Islam and regarded as a symbol. The crescent and star symbol became strongly associated with the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century. That's like the opening paragraph of Wikipedia. Only afterwards to become a symbol of Islam as a whole, after the 19th century. That we are not told about the mud flood reset, but they needn't have to. The lights went out on the world stage, and when they turned them on again, the Muslims were cradling the crescent moon in their lap. Like I said, controlled thigh opposition. Get used to it. It is what it is. It's the world we live in. Now, the crescent is something that I think about often nowadays, especially considering it's on the flag of my present home state of South Carolina. It is indeed difficult going anywhere without the wind flapping your face with it. What most people don't realize is that the modern flag wasn't adopted until January 26, 1861, which would line up with the formation of the Confederacy. It is during that assembly meeting when they added the palmetto. I'm not sure why, but if I had to guess, it was to give the federal government, as well as Lincoln's federal income tax, the finger. It is, they could call it, I guess, the finger state instead of the palmetto state. I will remind you that the present flag is the Confederate flag. I'm surprised they haven't changed it by this point. Like, there hasn't been an outcry to change it. Now, prior to that, the crescent had already been a prominent feature, technically the flag's only feature, when South Carolina was a leading member of the 13 colonies. An individual named William Moultrie, who we have a fort named after here, is accredited with the design in 1776. He employed it during the defense of Charleston. The Brits shot it down. A Sergeant William Jasper raised it up to rally the troops, and the rest is history. Why is Liberty? So you can see right there. So there's the original South Carolina flag. It's the crescent moon. You could see like the darkness there. The outer darkness is actually our side of the realm. You see Liberty there, and of course they removed the Liberty with the modern flag. Interestingly enough, I don't know why they chose to do that. Why is Liberty stitched into the crescent? I know what Liberty is, but do you know what Liberty is? It just so happens to be scribbled precisely where the hidden wilderness resides. And so, what were the original flag makers attempting to convey with a message such as that? That Liberty is actually contained within the crescent. Considering all that we've learned, it's difficult not reading the blessed realm in between the lines with something like that. Even among my own crew, the idea that we are residing within the outer darkness may not always be easily accepted, because who wants that? Actually, since I wrote this, it's amazingly accepted. A lot of people are talking about this. It's funny. I put this in a paper like over 2 years ago, and people keep emailing me all the time. Have you heard about this idea that we might be in the outer darkness? I'm like, yeah, I think you probably maybe heard that from my paper. I have been told that when I put that out there, I was like, I thought people were going to throw tomatoes at me. I'm like, who else is suggesting this at this time? I've been told that the Prague clock proves us to be in the lit portion, whereas the real estate symbolized by the crescent is the dark. But that is not how the light of the moon works. Just looking up at the next waxing crescent, why don't you? Or a waning, for that matter. It is not difficult to see what portions of the moon are lit. We are not residing in the lit portion. No, we're in the dark of the moon. Telling someone that they reside within the circle of the crescent coat of arms isn't necessarily a compliment. I totally understand that we have a sun to light up the skies some of the time, but that just plays right into the hand of the Shadowland allegory, Plato's cave and all that. Everything is but a shade of the true heavenly reality. The moon giving forth her own light should be your first clue. She doesn't need the sun. That's actually not entirely true. She does need the sun. She's powered by the sun. But it's not a reflection of the sun, as the Copernicans say. And I actually put there, well, technically she does. It is for energizing purposes. So the sun energizes the moon, and not because she's reflecting. Likewise, every hidden wilderness reference that I can find insists the blessed land is somewhere on this earth, well beyond the sun's horizon, but that it is also illuminated from a light source far brighter than anyone in the sunlit world could imagine. We know the light of the world and who that is, and that the darkness does not recognize it. But also, we went over that verse, but also the fact that the self-giving light forms a crescent is easily explained, and I will if you'll let me. So what do we see here? We see Genesis 1:16. And Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And then Matthew 24 says this: immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. And the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. But then I just realized something. I told you the moon gives forth her own light without backing up the claim. Somebody is bound to complain from the astronomy club. Say no more. I've included Moshe's account of creation as well as Yahusha's prophecy of a coming tribulation. And nowhere do I see a rock doubling as a reflector. Then again, show me an actual ball that does what the physics people claim, or the physicists. For most of you, this discussion belongs in a Hebrew Cosmology 101 crash course and is all review. Well, hang in there. Do something constructive while you wait on my explanation to the globe huggers, because there's one in every crowd. Clean the house or go jogging, brush up on your research or something. You know who you're dealing with. Thank you, the management. I have heard many ball lovers claim Mashiach didn't have the time to educate people about cosmology, and so he simply agreed with Moshe so as not to argue, because there was a cross to be hung from, and there were already Greek philosophers to educate the simpletons on the subject. Actually, I've heard that explained many times. They seem to overlook the inconvenient fact that he is the Word, which tells me that he actually dictated the two lights narrative to Moshe, including all the laws and commands and everything in there. But we are not allowed to connect those scripture verses in Sunday school. In optics, a caustic is a curve of concentrated light defined as the envelope of light rays reflected by a curved surface. We all know about the rainbow after a rain shower. The rainbow forms its arch because of the solid dome in our sky, which it mimics, the firmament. A lesser known example, though, is what might be observed in a coffee cup. The experiment is referred to as the coffee cup caustic. And it's something you can do at home, one which we are all capable of doing. Given a strong concentrated source, the provided light will reflect off the inside of the cup, forming a curved or crescent line. It works because, as Paul said in his vision, the visions of Paul, and I already linked you to it in this paper, The blessed land is located in the furthest extremities of the earth where the firmament happens to touch down, which with a place called Oceanus. And he actually says that the blessed land is beyond the sun and the moon, beyond the circuit, past the darkness, past the ice, where the firmament touches down, and it's just pure light there. And he seems to be describing the coffee cup caustic. And so if you need to see a picture of it again, right there it is. So you can see the crescent moon going around the earth. The outer darkness is referred to on a few separate occasions throughout the Bezorah of Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, and I tend to take you through them. Though here are the references if you'd rather commit to a hidden wilderness Bible study on your own. They are Matthew 8:12, 22:13, and 25:30. And here is the first mention. And I say unto you that many shall come from the east and west and shall sit down with Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. That would be Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The emphasis seems to be on the kingdom of heaven arriving in one location only to have the rebels removed to another. That other would be the outer darkness. But then something that I never noticed until it was pointed out to me the other day is that the children of the kingdom would be the ones removed from the premises. I mean, I had read that before and always took it to mean, the Jews of Mashiach's generation, but now I'm not so sure. That may still be the case. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just wondering if the children of the kingdom are inferring to the offspring of the millennial kingdom, that would be us, by the way. I can totally see a scenario where the hidden wilderness with Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and all the set apart is closed off from the world so as to prepare for Satan's release. If ever there was an event which might cause me to weep and gnash my teeth, then that would most certainly be the one. We read this in Matthew 22, 11 through 14. And when the king came in to see the guests, he saw there a man which had not on a wedding garments. And he said unto him, Friend, how did you come in hither, not having a wedding garments? And he was speechless. Then said the king to his servants, Bind him hand and foot, take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen. The outer darkness has a second notable mention, and it involves a wedding feast. A man is found standing among the guests, but without the proper attire. When the king asks how he has arrived without a garment, the man is speechless. I am of the opinion that the wedding guests are dressed immortally with the Ruach HaKodesh, which, if I recall, was noted earlier when commenting upon in my Paul paper on Zosimus' visit. So when Paul goes in his vision, he goes to the blessed land. He sees all these people clothed. It's like he says that it's almost like they would be naked, but they're clothed in this attire that is basically the Ruach HaKodesh. And I believe it's a bluish purple hue that everyone is dressed in. This is what you would be robed in with the Holy Spirit. And like I say here, these would be the very purple robes which Adam and Chahwaha, that would be Eve, Adam and Eve were vested in before, removing them. They were dressed in them and then they removed them for explicit purpose. It would explain why the guest didn't have the faintest clue why he wasn't clothed in the like and may not have even known until that awkward fact when pointed out to him. It's not like he'd forgotten to pick the choir robe up from the dry cleaners. In any way, it seems pretty clear that the wedding is taking place in one precise location. It's definitely not heaven. And I would have said the whole of the earth was the venue at one time. But then after everything we've gone through, forming a mental image shouldn't be too difficult. So again, the guy's not in heaven. Where is he? He's on the earth. He's in a place of the kingdom, and he's being removed to another place on the earth in the outer darkness. One man is being removed in this scenario, not millions upon millions or even billions of them. He had entered a premises where he didn't belong. Even gotquestions.org, I don't quote from them often enough, is pressed to admit that something is amiss here. Nearly all theologians claim the outer darkness is a reference to hell, but apparently that's not the case this time around with the internet Q&A people. Here is their quote. Perhaps the place of judgment is pictured as dark because of the absence of God's cheering presence. It then follows, very Platonic, of course, it then follows with several Bible memory verses. For once, I find myself shockingly in agreement with gotquestions.org. The outer darkness is a place of consciousness. It isn't Sheol, and it doesn't appear to be the abyss, nor does it sound like the lake of fire. Though, again, those are all very, Sheol and the abyss are very dark places, but I don't think that that's the outer darkness that is being referred to here. Sheol is dropped into the lake of fire in Revelation 20:14 once and for all. We're not at that point in history yet. Death itself is done away with. The destruction is irrevocable. It would be indeed strange for someone to be tossed into the lake of fire only to die and go to Sheol, but then be extinguished once and for all in the lake of fire. Nor have I ever, if you follow that kind of circular logic, nor have I ever seen a single reference to the lake of fire being a place of darkness. The Got Questions crew is absolutely correct in suggesting a place of spiritual darkness. And like I said, they include Bible verses. Let's look at them. Psalms 104 says this: you hide your face, they are troubled. Boom, there it is right there. You hide your face, they are troubled. You take away their breath, they die and return to their dust. You send forth your ruach, they are created, and you renew the earth. So we are enlightened with the ruach, with the Holy Spirit, the ruach hakodesh, but we see people just darkened, just their faces, their minds. They can just read the Bible, they can open it up, and they could just then turn and tell you that they're reading the Bible. Tells you that that 99 that the 1% says that we are to disregard the 99%, that you are not to be obedient to Yah. Like that's not, like Satan actually wants you to be obedient to the Bible. I hear this almost daily from comments I get online. It's the most ridiculous thing. These are people living in the outer darkness who cannot see the light. It's so evident when you open up the Bible of what it commands us to do. And so anyways, that's a good verse. Psalms 104, 29 through 30. The hidden darkness is quite possibly a place where Yahweh Elohim, or I should say Elohim there, hides his face. It may even be a state of mind. The reason I can say that is because of the passage which the Bible Q&A people follow up with. They put this in here. Yochanan Rishon 1:5, to be 1 John. This then is the message which we have heard of him and declare unto you, that Elohim is light and in him is no darkness at all. If we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and do not the truth. So you can actually you can walk about in the outer darkness by claiming you live in the lights, but you are in turn, you are not living as you ought. You're not being obedient. You are therefore walking in the darkness. A clear contrast to the hidden wilderness and the outer darkness is given in the stride of the individual. It is not where he is walking so much as in how he is walking. I've said it before, and I might as well do so again. People keep asking me for directions to the hidden wilderness. Well, read 1 John's then. He's already given the coordinates. The problem is that very few people like the answer. We either live in accordance with the light now, or we lie to others as well as to ourselves in thinking we will ever rise above the present darkness. 1 John 2:11, the next chapter says this: but he that hates his brother is in darkness, and he walks in darkness, and knows not whither he goes, because that darkness has blinded his eyes. The problem with life in the outer darkness, if this is indeed the outer darkness, and I'm growing more convinced that it is by the moment, is getting people to recognize the street signs. The illiteracy is by design. A spiritually blind person is someone who has been excused from Yahweh's favor. He walks about thinking he's inhabiting a spinning, wobbling globe, hurtling at hundreds of thousands of miles per hour through a vacuum of infinite space, because the truth of our cosmology, as well as the greater realm, has been removed from him. So that even the simplest observation regarding the flat horizon goes in one ear and out the other. The wool has been pulled over nearly everyone's eyes. It had to be that way. I believe it was by Yah's design. Yahweh employs the use of darkness to conceal his holiness from those who'd rather not take part in his set apart ways. It is a state of mind, but it is also a place. That is made abundantly clear in the closing chapter of the Bible, in which we read the following. Looks like I have two quotes here from Revelation. Revelation 22 says, I'll start with over here on the right, verse 15. Blessed are they that do his commandments, That they may have right to the tree of life. And may enter in through the gates into the city. So that there's one requirement there for two different things. If you want to eat from the tree of life or have a right to the tree of life and enter through the gates of the city, blessed are they that do his commandments. That's straight out of Deuteronomy, guys, the blessing and the curse. Cursed are those who don't do the commandments. They will be cursed. They will not have a right to the tree of life, nor will they enter through the gates of the city. See how that works? For without the city are the dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and idolaters and whosoever loves and makes a lie. Let's see what it says over here in the next chapter, or later on in the same chapter, 22, 23 through 27. It says, and the city had no need of the sun, neither the moon to shine in it, for the glory of Elohim did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light there. And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it. And the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, for there shall be no night there. And they shall bring the glory and honor of the nations into it. And there shall in no wise enter into it anything that defiles, neither works abomination, nor makes a lie. So you can see there that there is still uncleanliness, and that the city itself is only clean, but they which are written in the Lamb's sefer of life. The context of both of these verses is NY, and no, I'm not referring to New York, New Jerusalem, though I really like RY better, renewed Jerusalem. Nothing impure nor abominable can enter the city, and we have already seen those who lie in 1 John. They are walking about in the darkness, completely clueless to the light. The other thing which John mentions are the sorcerers, the murderers, idolaters, the whorers, something about dogs, and there are the liars again. The liar, pants on fire part once again reminds us that they may be self-illuminated, but they still wander around slapping for a light switch in the dark. I'm getting the impression that they're still living. I mean, that's the impression I'm getting. They're not dead. These aren't dead souls in Sheol. I have long felt this way. It's just it wasn't until rather recently, when I set out to uncover the outer darkness, that I realized what is happening here. The sinners aren't sitting around in a ditch upset at the fact that nobody is sending them an invite. No, it's not like that at all. After everything we've been through, I shouldn't even have to explain this to you. They haven't the faintest clue. All right, we're going to end on this section tonight. Phases of the moon and church cycles. The moon map is only observable when she is fully radiant with light. She then becomes a waning moon, and her light diminishes. We must then wait around for an entire cycle, waning and waxing, before the map of our greater Rome can be observed again. What gives? It was not always intended to be so. It is my personal thesis that Lady Luna was created to shine brightly in all her glory, all the time, never waning nor waxing. The fact that her light diminishes is a result of her transgression. And remember how I started out saying that even though the moon cannot be landed upon, I do believe that the moon is a divine being, a lady. I will be sure to show you where I'm pulling my information from. We will then settle into the implications. Before doing so, I might as well address the lunar-shaped elephant in the room. Does the Hebrew month, or the Kodesh as it is known, begin with a crescent moon or full moon? I'm asking. Now, right now, as I give this presentation, I'm almost smack dab in the middle of the fall feast. Some of you, if you are keeping the crescent moon, you may be through the fall feast now. We're just about to. Of course, some of you are in a 13-month year. And, I'm not looking for fighting words here as to who has the correct calendar. I am under the impression or the belief now that the full moon is the start of any given month. And it's what I go by this year, and went by, I think, last year as well. Now, modern Judaism says the waxing crescent is it, that it's the start of a month. And they may be right. For the record, the Islamic calendar happens to agree with Judaism. Contrarily, there is very good research which indicates the full moon is the biblical new moon. At this point in my career, I have yet to take an official stance on either position, really in terms of calendars. Though more often than not, my mind drifts to the calendar of the Essenes, one which I'll be talking about more next year, I think. After all, both Yochanan and Yahushua HaMashiach, that be John and Jesus Christ, may prove to be Essenes after all. And guess what? They believed in the Elysian Fields model of Earth cosmology, telling us that the moon map would be right up their alley. To the Essenes, you see, the calendar was not based upon the movement of the moon. The moon was never intended to direct our months, which is why, according to the Essenes, according to some calendars out there, which is why I was saying, imagine a world in which Lady Luna had retained her full illuminated glory all the time. It would certainly, if we were going off of a lunar calendar, it'd be much harder to keep track of. I guess you could, say, well, the sun is over here on the horizon, the moon's over there on the horizon, so we're going to start a new month. And Yahuwah made two great luminaries, and they were equal in glory, 20 and 1 years, less 602 and 70 parts of an hour. And afterwards, the moon recited against the sun a false report, and she was diminished. And the sun was appointed to be the greater light to rule the day, and the moon to be the inferior light to rule the night and the stars. That comes from Genesis 1:16 in the Jonathan Targum, or you could say the Aramaic Targum. The moon, as it turns out, has a biography to give. On the fourth day, the sun and the moon were created to be equal in glory. According to the Aramaic Targum, the moon's diminishing would not happen for another 21 years. The reason being is that she recited a false report against the sun. What is this false report? We are not told. The immediate takeaway, however, is that creation is repeatedly documented as a collective body of conscious spirits, all of which are imbued with free will. My regular readers will know better than to criticize me for having the Targum at my disposal. It is most certainly Jewish, though I am about to show you where even the ancient Christians overlapped on this. And this is what I'm always looking for. I love to read all the ancient texts and just see where they're in agreement and if they're in disagreement. So where is this from? Let me look here. I know where this is from. This is from Questions of Bar Talmai, which is, I think, originally the Gospel of Bartholomew. And he, Yahusha, took them and brought them again into the Mount of Olives. The context here is that this is after his resurrection during his 40-year reign on the earth. I'm sorry, his 40-day, not his 40-year, his 40-day ministry reign upon the earth. And Cephas said unto Miriam, who I believe here is Mary Magdalene, not Mary the mother, you that are highly favored, entreat the Lord, or I put Yahuwah here, that he would reveal unto us the things that are in the heavens. And Miriam said unto Kepha, O stone hewn out of the rock, did not the Lord build his church upon you? Go ye therefore first and ask him. And Kepha said, O tabernacle that are spread abroad. And Miriam said, you are the image of Adam. Was not he formed first, and then Chahwah, then Eve? Look upon the sun, that according to the likeness of Adam it is bright, and upon the moon, that because of the transgression of Chahwah it is cloudy. For Elohim placed Adam in the east and Chahwah in the west, and appointed the lights that the sun should shine on the earth unto Adam in the east and his fiery chariots, and the moon in the west should give light unto Hava, or Chahwah there. Hava would be the Aramaic, with a countenance like milk. And she defiled the commandment of the Lord, or Yahweh. Therefore was the moon cloudy, and her light was not bright. You therefore, since you are the likeness of Adam, ought to ask him. But in me was he contained, that I might recover the strength of the female. Now when they came up to the top of the mounts, and the master was withdrawn from them a little space, Kepha said unto Miriam, you are she that has brought to naught the transgression of Chahwah, changing it from shame into joy. It is lawful, therefore, for you to ask. Bar Talmai is the Hebrew name for Bartholomew, in case you were curious. And also, Questions of Bar Talmai, in its current iteration, is a hatchet job. I've talked about this a few times, as historical documents go. I already covered this passage in my Mary Magdalene's Second Eve paper, and showed why the Miriam in this story has all the personality traits of Miriam of Migdal, or Mary Magdalene, not Maria the Virgin Mother. Give it a read. To keep this short, Questions of Bar Talmai may prove to be the long-lost Gospel of Bartholomew, which was essentially ousted as a heretical text. And though Miriam of Migdal was initially deemed to be a second Eve, or Chahwaha in the Paleo-Hebrew, to Yahusha's second Adam, the RCC later scrubbed her part from history, placing Miriam the mother in her stead. And this is one of the reasons why this whole text is a hatchet job. I mean, I've pointed out that this woman here is not the personality in any way, shape, or form of Mary the mother. This is clearly Mary Magdalene teaching the disciples during those 40 days. The tampering is so patently obvious that many translators won't even touch the text, particularly on the basis that we have Greek, Latin, and Slavic manuscripts, copies which vary considerably in the wording chosen, though I still feel it has merit. What is evident is that in this text we just read, don't get lost in the weeds. What is evident is that Miriam, and pick your Miriam, the mother or Mary Magdalene, is described by Kefa, the rock, as a tabernacle. And I suspect it originally read tower. And that her celestial representation was the moon, whereas his and Messiah's was the sun. Take a mental note of that. Also worth mentioning is that the Latin has Miriam describing the moon in cloudy terms as a result of her transgression, which is how I take it to mean, though some other documents have the moon becoming stained with clay, and you are free to choose whichever description you feel is most accurate. What is particularly fascinating in both witness accounts, questions of Bar Talmai as well as the Genesis Targum, is that the moon's fate directly corresponds with that of Chahwaha, or Eve. When the mother of all living transgressed against the commands, so did Luna, her representative luminary. Therefore, women and the moon are inexplicably linked together, just as men and the sun are. That's not the end of it, though. What I'm about to show you may seem like a dead-end breadcrumb trail at first, but hear me out to the end, as my conclusion cannot be fully understood without. So this comes from the revelation of Moshe. Then Chahwaha says to them, "Listen, all my children and my children's children, and I shall relate to you how our enemy deceived us. It came to pass, while we were keeping paradise, that we kept each the portion allotted to him by Allahayam," that would be by God. "And I was keeping in my lot the south and west, and the devil went into the lot of Adam, where the male wild beasts were, since Allahayam parted to us the wild beasts, and had given all the males to your father, and all the females he gave to me, and each of us watched his own. And the devil spoke to the serpent, saying, Arise, come to me, and I shall tell you a thing in which thou mayest be of service." So according to Chahwaha's own testimony in Revelation of Moshe, she was given the southwest portions of paradise to tend to, as well as the female animals. Adam, the northeast, and the male animals. You figure the boys and the girls had meetups once in a blue moon, or else how were babies ever intended to be born from them? And I actually think it was probably in the moon cycle. I mean, the sun would overlap the moon, and then they would be together, and then it would pass by again. And so once a month, you might have this, the male and the female coming together eternally. It's passages like what we just read that makes me wonder if, as representative priests of humanity, and I just said this here, Adam and Chahwaha only came together in the garden when the sun and the moon united on their 28-day circuit. That may seem odd to you at first, but there are reasons for thinking so. We are given yet another witness to work with through the writings of Baruch. And it is Baruch which seems to tie it all together. This is what he says in chapter 9 of his book. I think this is third Baruch, chapter 9. "And they, having retired, the night also fell, and at the same time came the chariots of the moon along with the stars. And I, Baruch, said, Adonai, show me it also, I beseech of thee, how it goes forth, where it departs, and in what form it moves along. And the angel said, Wait, and thou shalt see it also shortly. And on the morrow I also saw it in the form of a woman, and sitting on a wheeled chariot. And there were before it oxen and lambs, and the chariot, and a multitude of angels in like manner. And I said, Adonai, what are the oxen and the lambs? And he said to me, they also are angels." Isn't that an interesting idea that the oxen and the lambs are angels? And in my Anunnaki research, I showed that the idea was in the Sumerian culture that lambs, or sheep, actually originated from heaven. Which at first you're like, what? But it's kind of interesting in the Aramaic Targum when Abraham binds Yitzhak, the ram actually comes down from heaven. It was reserved in heaven, and it ties back to the idea, anyways, that um, that animals came from storehouses in the heavens potentially. But according to Anunnaki literature, the sheep were actually a gift from the Anunnaki on the earth. So every time you see the sheep out there, just you note that they are alien creatures. And again, I ask, why is it that it at one time increases, but at another time decreases? Talking about the moon. And he said to me, listen, O Baruch, this which thou seest has been written by Allahayam. Beautiful as no other. And at the transgression of the first Adam, she was near to Samael. And that would be the same entity, I believe, as Azazel. She was near to Samael when he took the serpent as a garment, and she did not hide herself, but increased. And Allahayam was angry with her and afflicted her and shortened her days. And I said, and how does she not also shine always, but only in the night? And the angel said, listen, as in the presence of the king, the courtiers cannot speak freely. So the moon and the stars cannot shine in the presence of the sun, for the stars are always suspended, but they are screened by the sun, and the moon, although she is uninjured, she is consumed by the heats of the sun. Now, gave a presentation years ago now on the seven firmaments of heaven, and the case was made as to why I suspect Chahwaha's transgression happened during the 10th hour of the day, moments before sunrise. Furthermore, it happened precisely when the sun is about to lap the moon on their 28-day circuit, indicating a waning crescent in the present lunar cycle. The sun was precisely behind the moon when she peered down and caught sight of Samael clothing himself with the serpent for a garment, just as Adam was directly behind Chahwaha. So this kind of goes with my theory that if Adam and Eve were only to get together when the sun laps the moon and they come together, where we get a lot of our, like eclipses and such, that it was right as the sun was about to touch the moon when Satanael or Azazel, Satan, he came in, clothed with the serpent, and he transgressed with her. All right. And I put a link there to serpent seed. Like the mother of all living, the moon increased when she should have hidden herself from the unfolding scene. So it's this idea that, kind of the moon act in a very shameful way. Like she increased herself, right? It's almost like this idea of undressing and showing herself. She's so excited by what she's seeing, this gossip that she's seeing what Chahwaha, what Eve is doing with the serpent, when she should have hidden herself. She should have, instead of going back and telling the sun what was happening from a gossip perspective, she should have run to the sun and hid herself. And what's more, she involved the sun in the incident, just as Chahwaha in thought to invoke Adam, as above, so below, or contrarily on earth as it is in heaven, which is why to this very day, the moon is a self-illuminating light, which isn't simply screened by the sun, thereby diminishing in the firmament. No, she also receives her strength from him, and the feminists will not be pleased to hear of it. All right, well, I'm going to be ending on this note tonight. The person most capable of summing up the situation with the moon and her waning light, as it pertains to the moon map, is the medieval mystic Hildegard of Bingen. I recently quoted from her in my Lady in the Unicorn paper. If you haven't seen that presentation, please go check it out. It's one of my most favorite things I ever wrote. People are like, the unicorn, Lady in the Unicorn, but there is so much there that just gives defining character to what I believe was going on in the Millennial Kingdom among the priests and kings. And I cited that she may in fact be Millennial Kingdom residue. And in that one, you may recall, she attributed the moon to woman. And so let us review this. She says, woman is weak, looks up to a man to provide for her, just as the moon receives its strength from the sun. For this reason, she is subjected to man and should always be prepared to serve him. For by the works of her knowledge, she covers man, because she was fashioned from both flesh and blood, unlike the man who was originally clay. So it's kind of interesting, this idea that the moon became clay-like again when, the moon didn't start out as clay. So you see how that works? Woman started out as divine, and then she became like the earth, which Adam started out as. On this account, even in his nakedness, he looks to woman to clothe him. Hildegard has so many random interleaved quotes in her arsenal of prophetic work that it would seriously take a book to dissect them all. I literally have several books by her, and I've read them, and I love her work. It is incredible. It is so just, it's not like just pulling out C.S. Lewis quotes. It is so involved, and the whole thing just connects to the whole greater body that, I could show you one passage that she talks about, and it connects to like 20 other things. And you're like, okay, how does this connect to that? And you just have to read it to know it. And I've had a very difficult time kind of picking her apart. That's why I have yet to write a paper on her. I want to so bad. And it's just one of those like a mind of a woman, that like, it's hard to penetrate that mind and get into it. But then once you get into it, can you ever get out? She's just an amazing woman. Anyways, I would prefer that you read her stunning catalog for yourself. And if not, then you will have to take my word for it when I tell you that Hildegard saw the moon as a feminine representation of Eve and also of woman, and that furthermore, the ecclesia, the church, was feminine, deriving her light from the sun rather than the sun, the S-O-N, the son of God, the son of Elohim, Elohim, rather than the sun in the sky. Now, to quote her again, hence, man contains in himself the likeness of heaven and earth. In what way? Well, he has a circle, which contains his clarity, breath, and reason, as the sky has its lights, air, and birds. That comes from Scivius, Book 2, Vision 1. Hildegard wasn't simply being figurative when she insisted that the entire cosmological model was circular, as it resided under the firmament. And you can see here that she always is making mandalas, these circular sacred geometry that, once you go into that mandala, it is a microverse within the macro, or you could say the macro expands from the micro, right? It's just endless possibility within this very small space. And these are the rose windows that we see in all the cathedrals. And of course, it represents the third eye that you go into this sacred space, make things happen. Elsewhere, she referred to cosmology as egg-shaped, but that is only because the soul of man is a mandala of cosmology, a fertile and ever-expanding macroverse residing within the microverse, as I just said. And that is to say, man contains within himself a soul with the potential for heaven, though he be clothed in the garments of the earth. And the garment was made for him by a woman. And of course, even if it is the millennial kingdom which has our focus, try not to forget that the kingdom of heaven is ultimately and only experienced from within. So as we have this discussion about, the millennial kingdom came and went, well, the kingdom of heaven is still found within. You can still experience it within. Hopefully I need a quote from her again when telling you that the sun signifies the Son of God who brought light to the world. And likewise, the moon is the ecclesia receiving her strength and her light from the sun. Therefore, the moon waxes and wanes with the high and low tides of the ecclesia. This is what I really want to end on tonight. Okay, I want you to think about this. When you look out there at the sky and you see the moon waxing and then waning to a dark moon and then waxing again to a full moon, and what the moon is, we refer back to what Eve did, the transgression of woman and man, and how the moon has diminished its light. But if we can see the moon itself as the ecclesia, then and the millennial kingdom and the 1,000-year reign, the fact that we are in the short season and the outer darkness, the moon, I'll say this again, the moon waxes and wanes like with the high and low tides, just like if you've ever been to the beach, the water goes down, then it goes up, of the ecclesia, particularly as it pertains to the progress or the regression of her virtues and moral failures in the pages of his story. When the ecclesia is shimmering at its full, the hidden wilderness can be seen and enjoyed by all, as even renewed Yerushalayim is disclosed. The moon isn't simply a map in the stars, highlighting the existence of the blessed land from time to time, but a GPS coordinate located within the very microcosm of our soul, within the mandala of our soul. Second Adam and second Chahwaha have already shown us how to get there. All right, I hope that was informative for everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Feel free to email me, write me if you have any questions. I try to respond. Some people ask me to write a book for them. I can't do that with my schedule. But again, we'll do this again probably this Thursday night. Friday night will be our going through Deuteronomy. We'll do this again next week. Love you guys. Have a great week.